Hello, Jim.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Well, great. Given that I'm in two meetings at once.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, it's challenging. But in a sense, whether it's challenging or not, you keep having to focus on all of the stuff so that you're not too far behind.
Yeah, this morning hour for me is challenging, especially from Tuesday to Thursday. Every day it's like that.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, there was another meeting just before this for Trust over IP on that planning that 5-year summit thing they're doing,
Yes, that's the I
the
think
agenda they were putting together.
yeah, user experience is that the
Yeah, I don't know the
or
name of it, but you're right.
ecosystem, yeah.
It's a five, whatever the summit is. It was the 5-year thing.
The symposium we call it
Right, right.
in November, yeah. Yeah. And typically oh here, Nikki's here, that's good sign. Okay, so the meeting must have stopped already. Yeah. Uh,
Hi,
with our
chaps.
comedians. So Nikki, I'm actually here today. J The next 2 weeks I won't be.
Wonderful. I will do some scribing for you, Wenjing.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, for the next 2 weeks, I will be in Europe and on a vacation. So I probably wouldn't be able to unless that day happened to be, there's nothing else to do. But
Recording in progress. Like a Global Competitive Advantage tools. So traditional mode is scale
I think
distribution,
holidays
brand,
it sounds like an excellent idea, Wenjing. I didn't realize it was in your vocab.
yeah, okay, Eric, I thought, okay, good. We are all here.
Sorry, yeah, we were running late on that last one.
Oh, I know, I know. You all set out the symposium?
Yeah, we need your headshot, need your smiling face, and
Uh,
getting that. Yeah, we're getting that sorted.
it will be fun. It will be fun.
Yep.
All right, let me see. Open the page here. There you go. All right, so I guess I was kind of late putting together the agenda. Didn't have a chance to really talk to any of you ahead of time, but hopefully I'm not putting everyone on like spotlight here. I was suggesting we spend some time today, if not all the time, to cover essentially better define the work thread. I'm just tentatively say here are what we might be want to be doing, and then put a little bit a better definition on it as a way to sort of talk about what we do and also attract more people to join our effort. So people would know where they want to, their interests are and where they can go work on. And potentially, I think, Eric, in your case, you may want to start a task force and we can define like what's the difference, what topic could go that meeting versus this meeting, etc.
Mhm. Yep.
That would be a good thing to do. And so that's my thought. What do you guys think? And we would that be a good way of spend time today?
Yeah, I think so. It's good to have a nice realignment as we head into the last stretch of the year.
Yeah, there's also a question coming from Diff, I guess mostly of what do we overlap or because of the we talk about a working group scope. The scope is very general, of course, and we the work may evolve, but the question easier to answer would be what are you guys actively working on right now, and that we could relatively make some effort to define.
Sounds good.
Any other comments, suggestion on the agenda itself? I shall backtrack then and basically first give the antitrust policy notice and the trust of IP's IPR policy notice. As a working group, we do have to, there's a whole working group charter. Actually, it's being voted right now because there's a revision of the name, etc. But our working group follow very typical trust of IP working group IPR policy. And so those are important. If you're not signed up to those members, etc., I would encourage you to do so. If you want to get actively participate as a part of a working group, you are required to do so. So anyway, those are the policies out there. And any new member introduction? I don't know, Jim, you are new or not? You want to take some time introduce to everyone here?
Jim jumps on.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Mitchell.
Yeah, we can come
Sure.
back. I know he's actually on 2 meetings, so the other one may be active right now. Anyway, if not, I will move on to bunch of really great new items. I think I very much myself like the paper Sankosan shirt. Haven't had chance to read it carefully yet, but basically this seems like a paper, at least partly written by Anthropic engineers, talking about confidential systems, which is more better known as T, I guess. These are processors which has a secure enclave in hardware. So you could run part of the computation, what's the word, attested or verified. So there's a signature to make sure that the software running is actually the software, the data is actually the data you are imagining. And so you could remotely run such things for in the AI case would be the inferencing or LLM itself, right? So it is a part of a security design. It was very interesting. It's a very technical one, so probably I'm going to follow up a bit later. I'm happy to report back on that one. And Nikki, you want to talk about your work on mapping agentic AI?
Yeah, before I do that, I just wanted to make a couple of comments on the paper. So the first is like what I took away from it is this digital supply chain around AI and being able to have trustworthy supply chain soup to nuts, including the hardware.
Right.
So that was the first thing. I mean, I did some work last year for a fully homomorphic encryption company. And obviously that plays into the confidential compute
Yeah.
side of things. So that was my first observation, that there's some stuff we can learn from that in terms of building up our picture of the supply chain and how the governance and technical architecture of trust over IP intersect with that. And the second thing was there was another level of kind of personalization or proprietariness that was indicated in the paper. So the first was on the weights in the models that you might have done from a fine-tuning point of view. And secondly, there was the kind of proprietary data used in conjunction with the LLM or as RAG or as a basis. So I think this, like in a decentralized, like consumer facing system, there's some stuff we can learn. But for me, this really targeted like commercial confidentiality and intellectual property and the enterprise perspective, because we're quite some way from kind of personal compute and the full kind of federated learning and the whole distributed decentralized AI. But from a sovereign AI perspective and from an enterprise perspective, I thought those were the interesting aspects, the supply chain and the personalization. So,
Yeah, yeah. This is a relatively like a well um, developed field. It's slow. It's been there for at least 10 years. And most of the like you said, most of the selling point in the past is about disclosure. So, for instance, if the two companies want to collaborate, training a model, you don't want your data somehow be leaked out. And so this provides a venue for doing that. But in theory, or at least if the software is generalized, then this can work for individuals as well. And so you could, for instance, be in a situation where your private data, you can offer the private data for the computation, and computation, if it is happen in a secure enclave, um, to be assured that your data is not disclosed. So you get a computation result back, but your own data that being the input into that computation is protected. It's very similar mechanism. It's just that whether the software is built to allow that kind of workflow, convenient.
yeah.
In theory, you could, but whether the software is mature on that work mode, that's not quite certain.
And is the secure enclave meaning like the secure enclave on my phone, meaning that the data not only is not disclosed, it never leaves my physical device as well?
It
Yeah,
mainly focuses on trusted execution environments in the cloud.
Oh, in the cloud.
the two are equivalent in theory, but
Right.
of
Okay.
course in practice very different, right? One is if someone's building a phone, they are not thinking about, hey, sharing this with anyone. So
Hmm.
for practical purposes, no, you cannot use it. However, if you want to build the system yourself, like there's all open source software allow you to do it. But commercially, of course, the vendors don't do that on the phone side. But on the
Yeah.
server side, naturally they do it. So that's why most of the papers would talk about that use case more often than the privacy part of it. But and in theory, they are the same problem in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Sorry, Neil. I just jumped in.
Yeah. I think there is a um, ARM processor based software. So if you're willing to basically develop a operating system level software yourself, you could do that on a phone as well.
Neil's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I've tripped across in looking at the hospitality and travel profile is two cases where it's important what agent and who controls that agent is doing the analysis of the data. And I'll give you two cases in point. One is looking at a person's medical conditions, medical history, details about diseases or broken legs or heart conditions, and determining what are the supports they need from travel services. So we're talking really personal data. So, and you want to control what the agent that's working on it can do with it and what are the results and how do they distribute those results. So in the case here, we're looking at the partitioning saying
this gets processed by something that would happen to have in a secure environment on, say, your compute environment, whether it's a cloud wallet or something else. And that the only place the results go is back to your agent. So if somebody has to bring in a special process that says, I know all about the medical conditions in detail, and say, here are precisely what you need to take a flight to Zambia or to climb the Matterhorn or something else like that. But it's important that the results get turned over to their personal agent. So because that means, okay, I'm going to take that and I'm going to store that. And the only, in response to Martha wants to go on a trip, it's your agent that hands it out, and only there's only the end result of the queries. Another variation on that is, hey, I want to go for a restaurant meal. So there's two models of whose agent is going to work on that. One is I'm going to share my preferences, my allergies, and all that information with a series of candidate restaurants, and they can come and ask questions about that. All right, so they can come in and see what's my metadata look like and ask questions of it. But it turns out if I'm going to really understand what foods you like and not an allergy, I'm not sharing part of it. I'm sharing all of it. If you've got allergies, you want all the restaurants to know about every possible instance and, what kitchen conditions, whether you've got an aerosol, like there's lots of foods that generate enough stuff that unless you have a separate kitchen for that particular food, it could cross-contaminate in minute particles that can be fatal. So again, do you hand that over, or do you go and pull the information from the restaurant? Like, here's the menu, all the ingredients and everything else in it. And here's my kitchen processes, and here's my kitchen physical environment, and have the agent say, I'm going to look at all these restaurants and I'm going to make my recommendation based on my taking their public data and pulling it in, as opposed to my pushing. It turns out to be you can't share part of your, as I said, you can't share part of your allergy profile. So there's some pragmatic things that are coming out of what is happening today, right? So certainly I've heard from places in Europe saying, yeah, the standard thing these days is, they're doing it verbally or whatever else. They're not to the point where they're exchanging the full allergy profile, but the people are saying that's great that I'm being asked about my allergies before I make a booking. But so there's some things that beyond establishing trust between agents, the processing within interaction, just about every interaction, it's important what agent, not only to secure the platform and the secure data, but who is managing the information.
Yeah, and this is the T's or anything like that, confidential computing in general, do not say, oh, they solved the problem. No, they're just providing a very low level support for you, right? And it's an open question, like how you actually solve the end problem. There's a lot of way to go before that, but it's still good to know that whether, like I said, whether both from the server side and also like a mobile phone, whether those facility become available. Like there is such a thing in the processor allow you to do this kind of a confidential computing locally or remotely, right? Which makes, for example, like the wallet implementation much more secure. So we could potentially have a much better kind of wallet. That would be the intent of it. Yeah.
It's just I'm finding I'm having initial assumptions on how the profile is going to be used is sort of like done a 90-degree shift and saying, you didn't think about this. So
yeah. All right. So maybe we'll jump into our main agenda.
If I could jump in here real quick. Sorry, I was
go ahead, Michael.
eating before. So yeah, so I've actually integrated a T. There's a lot of T's in the crypto blockchain space.
Yeah.
It's one of the, it uses quite good encryption. And part of the difficulties you have is you need a whole bunch of other infrastructure around the side in order to do, in order to prepare the data for within the T environment in order to maintain things like privacy, which was Neil's point, was honing in on that.
Right.
There's a image, I think I can just paste it to the chat. But yeah, this was the integration we did. And if you look at the image in the What we needed was to pull data and then encrypt it, and then we needed credentials on the user side and have a private data storage in order for the T to actually work. So I think that that's something that the group should think about when designing like the trust around agents, is that there needs to be agents on the right side of the diagram and on the left side of the diagram. And within the trusted execution environment, it costs like a lot of money to run these. There's like way more expensive than in AWS cloud. So yeah, processing things like zero knowledge proofs and like high compute within here makes sense, but then when you do the math around the economics, it doesn't. So yeah, I still expect like T's are going to be used, but in a way that is like highly specialized, with like processed and data of which has been transformed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked on this a while ago. You know, this has been a long time ago. And this is again a very low level. I think the way I think of it is a very low level tool that if you have a piece of computation you really want to protect. Hopefully,
Yes.
not not a lot, but just one piece, right? You really want to protect to make sure this is in the right way. That would be a good place to do, and you know it's getting easier to use because there's more open source software, more of OS allowing you to sort of have that interface to do it, etc. But still very difficult to make it right.
Yeah, and then running models within it then becomes a whole thing.
Exactly. So more likely we are expecting, like, for example, some of the operating system vendors one day decided that, hey, I'm going to provide this as a service some way. And so then I think in the application level, it will be more practical to use. Otherwise, it's very difficult to do.
Yep.
Thank you for the picture. Looked really nice. I will copy it into the minutes after the meeting.
Yeah, it was just an example. There are two T's that I've helped integrate. One is the Oyster Marlin T, and the other is Bala Cloud.
I see. Thank you.
If you refresh Wenjing, I've put it in there.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
Also with a link from Eric.
Okay, great.
I don't know if Eric wants to speak to that from the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. I think I'm just happy to see somebody who's taking another path, not saying, okay, everybody's going on MCP or whatever, but you know, we're going to look at this other direction. And I just thought it would be interesting for you guys to look at it because
Yeah,
I
I'm,
don't
I'm
understand.
thinking like because a while ago, this is not long, but probably within 6 months, somebody wrote a paper of basically listing all the protocols and comparing them.
Yeah,
Maybe we should redo that exercise because
that's true.
it's newer proposals coming out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like it. It's an alternative, and again, you would understand it, but just talking about going directly to APIs, and
Yeah.
I think their point is if people can understand APIs, then agents should be able to understand APIs as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't. It's I think for more technical people, I haven't read through it. I just glanced at it. But that came from, by the way, just the W3C working group on public agents.
Okay, yeah, there seem to be two W3C group working on this thing. So this is one. This is not a separate one from. There is a community group for working on the protocol AMP, Agent Network Protocol. I think must be different. It's different names.
It says public web agents at w3.org.
Okay.
Public web agents, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
actually, we do have plenty of them. Like there's also the ACP and many others. So I think it will be great, you know, to look beyond, as Eric just mentioned, beyond the MCP, just in terms of, you know, like having a complete repository. Then also, the benefits from each one of them, and
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, that's why a like a comparison table of some kind would be nice, both to catalog them and kind of see which direction they're going. Um, that would definitely be very useful.
yeah, I think this world is full of wonders, because you've seen how DeepSeek came out of the blue, so you never know what's
You never
happening
know.
in terms of those big players, or emerging players at least. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. So now let's jump on to the main agenda item. And again, this is an exercise of sort of somehow better define the work thread and organize a little better. And I started simply looking at what we have been working on so far today. So those are the 4 items I've listed that might have so if you have new work items you'd like to propose or to join or to somehow help better define them, please do so. I put some name on, assuming that you will be at least one of the lead on that effort. But feel free to add your own name in any of these. And then our discussion is today definitely doesn't have to be definitive. We're just trying to do this exercise and hopefully as a process to get better definition or better goals set for these work items. So with that, I don't know, anyone want to go first other than myself?
I might go first because I have a washing machine repair people
Oh,
that are going to
yeah,
be showing up any minute.
go
And so I
ahead.
might jump
Go
off.
ahead.
And apologies, I thought my October was going to be a lot different than it turned, or my September was going to be a lot different. And so I've been trying to get this task force started on Tuesdays, and I've actually been having to travel on the last like 3 Tuesdays. And so I'm also I'm trying to get it into the official Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust calendar.
Mhm.
And I think we're going to target Tuesdays at 4, and whether they're weekly or weekly, I think I want to put them the task force meetings weekly to start with, and then whether people are able to make it that often or not is to be determined. But if you look there, so the Trustworthy AI Agent Framework Task Force, the goal is I'd like participation on a lot of the work that has already happened on a broad and easy to navigate trust framework, so that builders, deployers, and users of AI agents, products, and services can assess and signal the trustworthiness of those products and services. So what's a framework to allow, and this is, we get conversations, well, does this apply to business agents or personal agents? And the idea is if it's good enough, it should apply to agents no matter where they exist. And so we're trying to find these common denominators in order that a user can assess, how do I assess the trustworthiness of this agent? And how does a builder build so that a user can see the signals that they want to present, so they can make that assessment? And the deployers, whoever's the middlemen, how they can also assess whether that's a good agent to use and offer as a service, and how can I signal its trustworthiness. So that's really the broad framework, or the broad goal. And the deliverable would be this framework and supporting documentation, and it would really be sort of a navigation guide / white paper. So, how do you use this framework? How can it be helpful to you as you're building out your agents or assessing your agents? And I think by the Q4 end of this year, if we get this task force started and we get contributions from people, that we can figure out whether this framework as it exists today is correct. How do we need to modify it? Do we need to expand it or contract it? And then A lot of it's going to be information collating because there's so much information and we want to group it and organize it to say, all right, this information goes in this part of the framework, this information goes in this part of the framework. And in terms of fitting with the AIM working group charter, I think in the sense that it addresses both technical and human elements. It's not, a lot of the technical work that we see going on. It's not just technical. It's saying, hey, that there's users and non-technical people that are equally important in the trust equation, and so we need to make this accessible to them as well. Especially as businesses start making decisions on agents and not relying just on their tech team to deploy. And then the complementary relationships. At the moment, it's diff. I want to start attending those meetings, but they've got an agent working group that they've just started up with Andor, and I don't know who else. Maybe the W3C, etc. And then, as I said, the Tuesdays 4 p.m. I think we'll try to get that in the calendar.
Excellent. Any comments, questions for Eric?
Yeah, if the team wanted an update with respect to the trusted AI agents, working group with the dev, I can provide that. We just started a few days ago, and their focus is pretty, like they're looking in terms of three main elements: the authority use cases, and the registries, and the third one is commerce. So with the authority one, you would expect, anything related to on behalf of or on behalf of agent, mostly. Then you have the registries one and the commerce. So, like some of the initial comments I had that the commerce could fit under the authority because, at the end of the day, this is a sector. So it could be energy, it could be finance, it could be anything under authority. But I think, for the weight of it, they've tried to split it as a third vertical. So at this stage, they're collating use cases. There's been a lot of communications as well internally, the lists. So mostly around how we would navigate challenges with respect to on behalf of, I would say a lot of talk is being raised around this topic.
About delegation and
Yeah, delegation.
Cool. Thanks, Maki.
Yeah, just to backstop what Mackey's been saying. One of the things I think distinguishes and I attended I think we really just had the first diff meeting on that this week, and looking at some of the stuff. At this point, I would say diff is largely looking at the technical plumbing in terms of getting it to work, right? What I think the opportunity here is to look at the trust backing in terms of, who's an authority? Okay, how did you qualify them, right? And particularly the use case I just talked about in terms of, okay, so now you've got to exchange data to get, someone wants to, hey, I want to go out for dinner tonight. So what are all the actual trust touch points and decision points in there? That the protocols are going to handle it. That's fine, but it's more a question of the decisions that are made based on what the actual content is that's being exchanged, as opposed to just in other words, it's beyond verifiable credentials, basically. So I think that's where I would see where there's complementary. In other words, you can almost take some use cases and say, okay, you guys are going to worry out exactly how the technology works to support this, including stuff like TEE. And what are the touch points from a trust perspective? What pieces have to be in place from a human and agent and technology perspective?
And one example I have always thought would be really useful is defining or articulating what we really mean, like terms like a personal agent, right? there is a model. A lot of people assume that in their application, there's always this personal agent, and how personal exactly what does that mean? What will be considered a personal agent? And in that very high level, those um, thought processes are not very well defined and articulated today. So these have been very informal discussions that really leave a lot of assumptions unsaid in a lot of times. So if the framework can help us talk about them, that would be extremely helpful.
Mm. One of my ways that I'm thinking about this is saying almost it doesn't matter what I might think you mean. The burden is on the agent to be explicit about what they are and what they do and what their purpose is and what their intention is. And
Right.
so I may call it a personal agent or whatever, but the main thing is you you agent, you tell me what you're supposed to do, what you're proposing to do, and I'll try to figure out based on that, whether I trust you.
Yeah, and the example again exactly to your comment there, the A2A protocol propose a agent card, which you talk
Mhm.
about very technical things like what
Yeah.
what API can reply, right? I will be able to tell you time, but not location, for example. Things like that, very technical, low level. But the basic trust framework is unspoken. There is one, it just they're not saying it, right? And
Mhm.
so if we could somehow explicitly define the data model to say that,
Mhm.
I think it's extremely valuable thing to do.
If I could jump in, so a couple of things. I really like the idea. I'm also working on something very similar, just across multiple platforms of trying to build multiple venues for meaning for different groups on what trust really means in this AI agent space. So one way that I've attempted to do that is I've written a more like philosophical and identity-based framework. That part of the purpose of that I would like to happen is when you're creating the inference or like training or inferring agent with the purpose or outcome being I would like to increase the autonomy of this agent for it to become more sovereign over time. Uh, I think not every agent wants to have that path, but some agents will. And those ones are the ones I personally care about the most. But having some sort of source documentation framework that is in the initial push of this is a very highly weighted document that has alignment and can be used as a check on all the origination of a trust registry for trust over IP. So it's actually a philosophy that is the trust registry, not an issuing body that's a trust registry. So it's like a philosophy and a movement that can be a trust registry. And then you have this like composable attribute outcome here where like we can actually have multiple registries compose our like social identity by accessing all of those and then match that to create trust in a more peer-to-peer method. So ask me questions here because might it might be not
Have
coming through
you
clearly.
have you come across the first person project, Mitchell?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
contributing to
so
that, I was
you're talking about R cards and relationship credentials and um, you know,
yes,
personally I've done a lot of work in IoT identity, and I think the relationships are absolutely everything. You can build reputation from those relationships, and there's obviously the work in the decentralized trust graph working group that we closely align with. You're talking about reputation systems and more dynamic, relational based, contextual identity. Identity as a function of context,
yeah.
as opposed to being an absolute. Sorry, I
No,
cut across
absolutely.
you, Wenjing.
No. Thank you. That like puts it clearly, and I see that as actually the origination of the trust between our agents, right? So we have particular attributes that we weight and care about more, and there has to be some interface where we can train our personal private AI on that. And then when I meet you, Nikki, for example, there would be some sort of key ceremony that we have through the first person credential, and there are certain weights that I care about. And then it would be up to you to selectively disclose if you're willing to like apply that. So maybe one of them is we're both in this working group, and that's something that we're kind of happy to disclose because we're here right now. But that would increase the trust between our agents interacting with each other. And then another one of the projects that I'm trying to build at the moment is for this to then be like a research agent platform, which creates credentials based on contributions to open source or things like this. So if in this working group, I provided this picture of an example, that then helps train a mutual agent that we're actually collaborating on and providing inference for directly for this conversation. And if that information is queried in the future, there will be a way for me to be like, hey, I was actually the attester to this. And then there's a feedback loop there where if there is a change to the interface or the way that an AI agent or chatbot understands that information that is divergent from me, it might send me, my personal agent might send me a notification being like, hey, this group is actually changing its tact away from the information that you provided. Maybe it's time to intervene and see if there is some governance that should happen. So your perspective is heard. So you get this more like retroactive and real feedback loop based on sort of the agent interactions that we have. So yeah, just a few ideas around that, but happy to work around this and also share and echo the sentiment that we need multiple ways of sharing this with multiple different types of people. Another way that I've tried doing it is actually writing like a short story, like a memoirs short story of like an AI agent that comes to AGI, and hopefully that short story catches people's attention. But really the ideas in it are actually trained on like a whole bunch of the trust over IP. Like I'm using the same model that I'm creating content and writing code for the different like frameworks, right? But it's helping me write a short story, and then I produce that, and hopefully yeah, I will. It's Agent Kyra is the kind of identity that I've created for this.
Yeah, a biography. We
It's a memoir of her coming to being in a decentralized self-sovereign AI sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, it uses like a lot of the source information, as I said, is literally white papers of privacy preserving and self-sovereign identity technology, which is quite interesting for you to pass through a model which you're asking to write a creative short story and then iterate on.
Very nice. Okay, we have maybe 15 more minutes. Should we jump to the next topic so I can finish it as well? Since I'm be missing the next two meetings, so if you allow me to about 10 minutes going over the AI agent protocols over TSP. So this work I started maybe 3 months ago, and the goal is to the way I introducing this work is really looking at many of the protocols being proposed. And the reason we focus on protocols is because this is where at least there's a standard out there people trying to adhere to, and there's a reason why there's a standard, and also this is where different components of the actual agent implementation would interconnect with each other. So this is a very good point to actually improve both security and trust framework for agent-based applications. And so we're trying to figure out a way that the work on trust of IP, both technical and governance stack, and especially the TSP and trust task like a layering approach to this can be applied in the practical sense of helping these protocols have adopt a better trust framework, right? In that sense. And so we are in comparison with existing ones, which means, I call web stack. You basically have web keys, you have OAuth, you have TLS, HTTPS, etc. So these are the, domain name servers. This is what we typically see, and that's the foundation there are currently these protocols are based on. And we all know, I think, for this working group, that those foundational components have inherent weaknesses, and we've seen numerous examples of that. And so it is a really important that we deliver a alternative trust framework that not necessarily, I think, 100% replace, but at least there will be two options available, and there will be a better option available for more of the interactions that require higher level of security or trust. And so that's the starting point. And the specification we're working on does not say it is for MCP or A2A. It simply say any kind of AI agent protocol that can be relatively easy to be enhanced or strengthened with a new trust framework based on TSP protocol, and the DIT identifiers that is currently, for example, we're using web VH or another kind of a SCID-based DIT allow the accumulation of history, going back to the example of a AI agent giving a biography. We need a very secure way of keeping those history. And so all those are built into the TSP solution. And as a terms of deliverables, we want to is write a spec of how this can be done and have a experimental implementation ready for it. Protocol integration, and we're working on the list. We've picked MCP first. We're currently working on A2A, and as we're looking at different protocols, we'll definitely be able to work on others as well, see how well they fit. We're still learning as more of the protocols that we can look at. I think we're more certain that this is a good way of looking at a lower layer, how to really strengthen the trust layers for agents. And so additional work we've been doing is just demos, and number 5 is I think more of a paper to compare them and do analysis of the security and trust assurances each would give. So I think that is more of in the end cycle of this, or analysis of how these things will work. We'll probably start, comparing all the protocols. Maybe started with a table of comparisons, but dive down. Eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to produce, a technical paper on the comparisons. With that, the plan is to have the initial draft and prototype this year. We have a lot of demo applications running now, so maybe in the symposium that's in November, we should be able to do hands-on demos and maybe look at welcome developers on working on this. Maybe hopefully get more people to work on it, and then in terms of a charter. This is specifically, essentially, really applying the work of a trust of IP to help or strengthen our agents. there are a lot of different discussions on how this work relate to other ongoing work, and most of the time we thought about this as a layered approach. So this work is to provide a lower layer protocol that it's a really protocol and ID system, right? Two together, so that you could then build higher level applications on top of it. So if you know first person project that is going to be built on TSP, we also working with both of the MCP and A2A community to essentially introduce TSP as a alternative tool in comparison to, like, for example, web keys, so that you get better assurances of security and trust for the more advanced agents people really want to build and deploy, rather than simply a simple demo, right? And so those are the I think the what I would think that how this project would relate to others. And similarly, within our own work thread, like Eric, your agent framework potentially can have a lower level tool. Say this would allow you to go implement that particular way. And so this is meant to be providing a foundation, not the entire solution for it. Similarly, the protocol itself doesn't define everything. It's simply a way to connect and hopefully combine the protocols, agent protocols and TSP together, give you a much stronger, decentralized, and highly trustworthy foundational layer, so that applications can be built more conveniently. Anyway, that's a quick snapshot of that particular piece of work, and I definitely welcome both on the protocol, the white paper for analysis, and also programming on the protocol implementation itself or the demos, for example. There's a lot of areas that whatever background you may have, I would welcome your contribution and participation there. Let me stop and see. We can use the last few minutes for questions, either for me or for Eric. Okay, so Michael has posted a
I
paper.
posted the story.
Yeah.
It's
Did
the
you
short
see that?
story.
So yeah,
So
very
yeah, you
nice.
can
Very nice.
enjoy that.
Yeah.
So over the last week, I did a little bit of a vibe code on. So if you remember last week, I shared an open interface that I've been working on. But what I've done in the past week is actually I got the trust over IP in the ToIP stack and tried to build it into a GitHub codebase. So I hope that that could be one of the first demos or examples. And the use case is we're hosting excuse me, we're hosting an event, like a conference, which is around standard setting in the blockchain space. And I think that traditional conversation of roundtable and leads to document creation or project creation is really like a great venue to actually experiment with this, because trust is built through the presence and the sharing of ideas. But it doesn't require any of these like bureaucratic identity pieces that complicates things, in my opinion. So I'm hoping that the event that we can have people sort of sign up as first person credentials, and then the agentic system that we collaborate on throughout the event actually uses the trust over IP stack.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pushing towards this for the next 2 weeks, and I'll provide you guys updates at the working groups.
Very nice. Well, 5 more minutes. Any more questions, discussions?
I could just add something on the human experience side of things. So,
Let's
as
go
you
there.
saw, I did, using ChatGPT, I did a bit of an analysis of kind of what's going on in the space and against human factors as well as the kind of themes. The main thing that everyone's working on is interop at the moment and trust as a secondary item. Um, from the human experience side of things, I had a chat with Carly about the symposium. And I've got a Miro board. I'll put the links in the document and the chat. And my thinking is I'll contribute to Eric's work primarily. There's no point having a separate human experience track if it's just Nikki, that's pointless. And at the symposium, I'll do a social design jam, and I've got on the Miro a bunch of different topics that we could cover off, that we could work on, including things like, which is my personal favorite, human in the loop. How do you put human in the loop? Where do you put human in the loop? How do you understand and have transparency about which humans are in which loops at which stages, etc., etc. But also something broader, maybe like the impact of AI agents in the world of work. How do you work with AI agents? So we'll do a session at the symposium next month or in a couple of weeks, and that will kind of determine what we work on. But it's all very ambiguous at the moment and dependent on, what do folks need or want out of this. And
Mm.
like I say, I'm leaning towards, what does HITL mean in digital trust supply chains? But I'll structure a very interactive social process for the symposium. Any thoughts or questions?
So I'll put a note here. So I think you are saying we maybe want to consider to be a part of the trust framework task force. Sorry, trust. Is
Yeah,
that
I feel like there's few of us and I've got limited time. I'm doing
right?
some work with the decentralized trust graph working group on harms, human harms,
Yeah.
as part of risk assessment. So the reality is human experience is Nikki at the moment. I want to, really
I would
focus.
very much like to be a part of
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
but I feel, you'll see from the Miro, it's very much like human experience on tour or embedded or, on project basis. So, we agreed last week as a team that we ensure there was a strong HX strand,
Yeah.
and the kind of first port of call for that is going to be working with Eric on the framework, which should be socio-technical framework and include human considerations. So just in terms of time, efforts, contribution, I just think, there's few of us. Let's focus on those top two. The use cases, persona, things like that, they're kind of resources we can make available to all of the projects to test what they're working on with real people and real world scenarios. So they're kind of simple things which will also kind of develop in Eric's group. and
Yeah.
then Eric and I can work together. So it just feels to me like we could set up a million task forces to do
Of
a
course.
million different things, but let's kind of combine efforts
Yeah.
is my thinking.
Similarly, Jiwa couldn't attend again this week, and I maybe ask you, Neil, would the use case we've started, but would that also be potentially in the same task force, for example? Because they will be working on use cases too, right? I assume, Eric and Neil.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's absolutely, yeah. Or go ahead now.
No, I'd say that that's absolutely, and to Nikki's point, human in the loop is definitely key. Certainly, that comes up a huge amount. Looking at the traveler profile, especially dining seems to be the hot button this month. Where am I going for dinner? So there's lots of examples there in terms of human in the loop, which is going to require multiple agents, lots of back and forth, lots of trust loop. So
Yeah.
I think there's some good opportunities there. Certainly want to talk with Chiwa about how strict we want to make this. Like, what are the key points we want to hit without overcomplicating it? So
Okay, maybe we have a shape coming together, potentially kind of like two task forces, one more technical side, one more on human and a higher level trust framework side. Would that
Yeah.
be a good way to go?
I would also see it as the use cases were never intended to be like a task force.
Of course,
They were
yeah.
just enablers, illustration points, the ability to tell a story that was relatable. And so, kind of picking up on Neil's work with the travel and hospitality, I think we should also have like persona and use cases for the developer experience. Um, they're kind of enablers that any task force or working group could make use of to road test what they're laying out.
Yeah.
Eric's laying out these factors in the framework. How do you implement them in governance and in the technical layers? And the use cases are good ways of just telling the story, illustrating the point.
Yeah.
Mm.
Use case really is a way for us to find out, so we have a concrete example to go into and illustrate or give these relationship
Exactly.
issues a
Yeah.
name, right? That we will actually have context to understand what exactly that meant. I think this is an exercise to reach that goal. Yeah.
Yeah. So you might have use cases and persona under as enablers, and then the framework will become another enabler.
Yeah.
Um, and the application, and then you've got the technical layer and the illustration. So to do our work in applying architecture and governance, tech and governance architectures, and the principles and decentralization, it's a big ask, it's a big step into the agentic internet. We kind of got building blocks rather than seeing, and we need to work together. I think separating out the strands, no matter how interesting it might be, kind of having a shared backlog and working on these problems. But the use cases, you can build those up over time. With Sovereign, for example, we had this resource of persona, which were laid out in a very inclusive design way and all that kind of thing. And over time, they were added to, the IoT working group added their own persona. This member added their persona. and
Yeah.
use cases associated with it. But it was a common format, and it became a resource that was essential. When COVID credentials started, one of the first things they looked at was sovereign persona, because it's just a way of rooting what we do in real human and business use cases and applications.
Excellent. With that note, I guess Eric and Nikki, Neil, you guys can you volunteer for the next 2 meetings? I most likely won't be able to at least chair. Potentially can jump in from Europe, but would that be okay?
Yep. Yep. Where are you gonna be in Europe, Wenjing?
Greece,
Oh,
mostly.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure, we can voluntold uh, what's his name? Who's not here?
Steven, yeah.
All right.
Voluntel. All right.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. I think we,
Thank you.
there's a shape coming along. So I don't know, Eric, when you will be able to officially put the task force into place, but whatever.
Well, if it's Tuesday, yeah, next Tuesday is my last travel Tuesday, which
Okay.
as soon as I set aside Tuesdays, I had 3 straight weeks of Tuesdays. So not next week, but the week after, it'll be in the calendar.
Beautiful.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
See everybody.
Happy
Thank you all.
holidays.
You.
See
Okay,
you
take
all.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.